Evelina mai kako, and welcome to the Hawaiian Kingdom podcast. Evelina mai kako, and welcome to the Hawaiian Kingdom podcast.
Aloha kako, and welcome to the Hawaiian Kingdom podcast. We're here with Uncle Kale. The title of this podcast is Uncle Kale, Land, Law, and the Question of Hawaiʻi. Uncle Kale, mahalo for being here.
Mahalo for having me. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, I love you and hope all is well.
And I love all the things that you've been doing. It's great.
Mahalo nui loa. So just to get started, what made you really look into your own home and feel like something wasn't right?
Well, first off, I was a mortgage broker. And so at that time here, I was helping a lot of people refinance their loans, and even people with bad credit. And at that time, we were able to get all kinds of loans, and at a higher interest rate, and people qualified. And then the market hit. The investment banks from the East Coast started to collapse. And there was a case in Florida in regards to foreclosure. And Florida is the only state throughout America, including Hawaii, that does not allow non-judicial foreclosures. So in Florida, when you had a foreclosure, you had to go through the courts. All the other places, including Hawaii, is that non-judicial foreclosure basically says, if you don't make payments to the bank for 1, 2, or 3 months, the banks themselves can foreclose on you, and then give you notification of to auction. So right then and there, I stopped getting loans for my clients, but the clients I did have were facing a foreclosure. And so I had to scramble to try to figure out a way of trying to save their homes and all kinds of stuff using federal law. And then I met Dr. Keanu Sai. And on a completely, totally different issue, it was to block the development of the largest fish farm off the Kohala Coast. And so I went and sought his help, even though I didn't know who he was. And I was able to meet him in Honolulu. And so he agreed to help me with that case. And then as we were sitting down talking story, I was telling him about the foreclosures and all the research that I was doing using federal law. And then he turned to me and he said, you know that all titles in Hawaii are defective. And I just said, what? He said, yeah. And so we sat down and he gave me the whole information and evidence. And once I saw that, I jumped right into it, to see if we could save the people's homes that I had gotten loans for. And so from there, I started learning a lot of stuff from Dr. Sai. And, and all of my clients were jumping on to try to save their homes. And so my feeling was that I can't ask people to jump into this unless I do it first. So the home I had, my first home, which was a beautiful home, I really loved it. I decided to test the market using Dr. Sai's evidence of the titles having defects. So we started that. We notified my bank, and my bank ignored it because the bank is the insured on a title insurance policy. And so I cannot file the claim with the title insurance company. It is the bank that has to file the claim. And we submitted evidence of the defect and we pointed it out directly. Even on the title insurance policy, it shows where the defects are. And the bank refused. And so I came up with the idea with Kale and told him, you know what? I'll just stop paying the monthly payments on the house to see if we can force the bank to comply. And then there was a whole number of years of going back and forth, and the bank's refusal and so forth, and the threat for foreclosure on my house and so forth. And as I was going through that, a sense of being a Hawaiian Kingdom subject just grew and grew and grew in me to the point where by the time the bank was trying to foreclose and sending, everybody in the ante to kick me out, my patriotism to the Hawaiian Kingdom just blossomed because of the feeling that they are taking away a Hawaiian Kingdom land, and they have no business and they have no legal right to do that. So that's how I jumped into it, and so for people who've seen the videos and so forth, and it took them maybe 7-8 years to finally getting around to sending the sheriffs to evict me. And by that time, we had maybe 300 or 400 clients for Laulima title searching claims. And that's why I formed Laulima title searching claims, so that we could help people that receive foreclosure notice on all the islands, not just Hawaiians, everyone, to show them where the defect was in their title and how they can file the claim. And none of the banks wanted to do it. None of the banks wanted to file. And this created a huge problem when Dr. Sai took it to a conference in Honolulu before the bankers and the real estate people, as well as all the other people involved in real estate. And there was like 600 or 700 people that attended. And he went through the whole thing. And the attorney who represented all of these banks, they had it's called some kind of organization, I don't know. And he approached Keanu and he said, what you said and what you showed, he said, I can't dispute that. He said, but it's going to provide a huge problem for Hawaii, if this thing goes through. Because, one, all the titles are defective. Two, the banks will not be able to provide loans to the individuals because of defective title. And three, this is going to bankrupt both the banks, the real estate industry, and anybody involved in property. And so the battle started right from there.
Wow. Looking back, was there like a point where you knew that there was just no turning back?
Oh, yeah, it was as I was getting notices to foreclose on my house,
Mm.
and the aloha aina in me just got stronger and stronger and stronger,
Mm.
and right then and there, I was willing to fight. I mean, literally fight to protect not necessarily my land, but a land that was owned by a Hawaiian,
Mm.
a Kanaka Maoli, and so that's where, the drive really started. Well, actually, the drive really started when I came back from America,
Mm.
from Oregon.
Interesting. And when you went into court, what were you trying to explain to the judge?
Well, we showed the judge, we provided the judge with all the evidence.
Mhm.
Uh, First off, the the policy, that the title policy, and we showed where in the title policy it says, providing defects.
Mm.
The second thing we showed is that we went in with all the expert information that because of the overthrow of the Hawaiian Kingdom, the overthrow as a result when the illegal government took over under international law and the laws of occupation, that was illegal. And that in the Hawaiian Kingdom Constitution, it says that the Bureau of Conveyances has to be in charge by uh, the Hawaiian Kingdom. And so when the rotten government took over from the Queen, that automatically um, made whatever transactions they made from that point illegal because they were breaking one international law, they were breaking Hawaiian Kingdom law, and at the same time, they had no jurisdiction because you needed to get in any of the process of the land titles, land holdings, it required a signature from a notary that was a Hawaiian Kingdom notary. And that didn't happen from the time that they took over all the way up until the present. Whenever there was any kind of action in the Bureau of Conveyances that needed a notary, you had the illegal notaries signing off on this. And so we had, oh man, we presented the judge with about evidence about that high
Jeez.
of all this stuff. And initially, when we first brought it to the judge's attention, he got really mad. He got really pissed off. And um, and he took us, he did a recess, in the courts. He was very angry. And he used the excuse that he needed to review all this stuff because we caught him off guard.
Mm.
We totally caught him off guard. He wasn't expecting in a foreclosure situation to be presented with all this evidence. Because normally in Hawaii, when there's a foreclosure situation back then, it was automatic.
Yeah.
The judge just said, rules against the homeowner and the bank can foreclose immediately because it was a non-judicial foreclosure.
Right.
And in my case, because we submitted all this evidence, he wasn't expecting that amount of evidence and the legality behind it.
Wow.
Because it was, and the first time we did that, I was really excited, because I thought, no way would the courts rule against us with all this evidence we provided. And it was very specific, with violation of laws of occupation. We showed that the violations of Hawaiian Kingdom Constitution, and this was all from the experts from Manoa,
Oh, wow.
and they provided all this stuff, all the PhDers from Manoa, and on top of that, they all volunteered to be witnesses for me if we went to court, on all this stuff. And so by the time the court was reconvened the next time we got in there, the judge denied everything, because he took it probably to the governor and whoever else. And they decided to circle the wagons against us. And they knew, because we were out there gathering and helping other clients through Laulima title search claims. And we presented a huge problem for the court systems on every island. Because, in some of the cases, the judges, they automatically ruled against us. But, the transcripts from the courts, ties the judges whenever they say something. And so some judges, in the transcript, this one judge out of Hilo, he said, I'm not going to allow this argument, because it would be like an atom bomb blowing up in the courts. He knew, but instead he denied, he denied our movement to dismiss, and he went ahead and allowed the foreclosure.
Wow. Did the court ever directly address the stack of evidence you had, or did they just move past it?
No, they just moved past it.
Wow.
And they use a non-judicial foreclosure stuff, and because it's the kind of case that only the judge makes. We couldn't get a jury trial, because we always wanted to have a jury trial, because it takes that decision out of the judge's hands. And so with all of the experts that we had lined up, we were confident that we could convince a jury,
right,
that they should be ruling in favor of our clients. But the judges would not allow it. It was really, really frustrating. And, every case we took into court, I always had a positive attitude. And knowing the amount of evidence we had that we would win the case, never happened. However, we put the legal courts on notice, because we started to break through some of the cracks, in the cases that we took in the courts. And, at first it was just small stuff. But then we started to find more cracks where the courts were forced to accept the evidence, bits and pieces of the evidence, which was quite a bit. And so by having them accept that, the judges, we were breaking down their ability to deny our case. It was really, it took time, and our attorney, Dexter Kayabo, you know, he hung in there with us from the beginning and all the way until, we finished. And a lot of the legal stuff that we brought up back then, people are now starting to use that in their cases. And it's creating a huge problem for the courts, as well as for the enforcement officers, whether they're sheriffs or cops.
Interesting. What evidence do you feel in that big stack of evidence was the strongest when you presented it for your case?
Oh, real simple. Treaty of annexation.
Hmm.
There was never a treaty of annexation that allowed the United States to take over the Hawaiian Kingdom. And it's not just, it's international.
Hmm.
And all the countries, including the United States, recognize it's a treaty of annexation before they can do that. But with Donald Trump in there now, he's showing where the violations are when he says he wants to annex Canada,
Hmm.
and then he wanted to annex Greenland, and annex, not annex, but take them over, literally take them over, and he can't do that. There's no treaty of annexation, and then he accuses Russia for doing the same thing with Ukraine and some of the other countries. So there's a huge conflict. And the United States uses it for their convenience.
Do you feel like the court actually understood your arguments that you guys were making, or did it feel like you guys were speaking two different languages?
Absolutely, the court knew
Wow.
about our legal approach,
Hmm.
and they couldn't refute it. They couldn't refute it. All they said, with all of the homes that got foreclosed on, all they said, and they ended up denied. Boom, that was it. They didn't give any reasons or anything. We were looking for the reasons because we
Mhm.
knew that until, in the discussion during the court case, the judges would make comments. And that's the stuff we got from the transcripts.
Right.
It's really important that we got that stuff, because we caught the judges saying things that was just totally contradicting their decision. And it was crazy.
It's interesting.
And at the same time, it was frustrating, and it made me even more angry.
Hmm.
To go against the courts and try to shut them down, and so anyway,
Wow.
that's why I'm so active in what I do.
Wow. That's powerful. I remember taking a class with Dr. Keanu Sai, and he had given a good example using US constitutional law of, not being able to transfer public land to private land without due compensation, right? And he used an example, I think, of like President blank. You could put your favorite president in that blank, Bush, Obama, Trump, whoever you want. But he said, imagine a ex-president owned a ranch, right? The US government couldn't seize that ranch for their property without due compensation, right? So I think one of the big problems that even the Queen was still fighting after the overthrow of the government was, where was the compensation, right, for her crown lands? Where was the transfer, right? Show us the treaty, in other words, of cession or annexation. And I think that's the crucible of the argument, right?
Yeah. Yes, and then there's all the the other evidence that follows through.
Right.
And especially on the title insurance policies,
Mhm.
it states right there. That's where we got, what the defects are, and showed that we sent letters to several banks, that asking them to file a claim with the title insurance companies.
They
They
wouldn't.
never file a claim because they've got to file a claim first before the homeowner can do it, because the homeowner doesn't qualify.
How many
Because
how many
that
different banks? Oh, go ahead.
that policy is the named insured is the bank.
Mm.
It's not the homeowner. And a lot of homeowners get that wrong. And the reason being, they're so anxious to sign the pages at closing, they'll sign anything
Yeah.
just so that they can get the key to move in the house.
Yeah.
And at the same time, at closing, the person that's handling all the signing says, "Oh, I have 20 minutes," and they have documents like that they got to sign.
Sheesh.
So and people just sign,
Mm.
including the agreement of non-judicial foreclosure,
I see.
which is huge.
Right.
And they cannot say, "Oh, they didn't know," even though they didn't know. They had the opportunity to review all of the documents, and they should have just told the closing officer that I need to take time to read through the documents, but no. The closing, the officer say, "Well, in order to get your house, you need to sign this as quickly as possible."
You've used the term war crimes. What does that mean in a legal sense in your view?
First off, the important part about what happened in Hawaii is that we were never ever colonized. Okay, where a country can come in, bring in their government, and quote, take over and colonize the people so that they submit to the law. And that was happening all over the world. Well, as a result of that, they couldn't do that in Hawaii, but they did. And it was all illegal. And they broke the laws of occupation. Because under international law, when a country takes over another country or occupies another country, they have to follow the laws of occupation, because we said that there was never a treaty of occupation, annexation. So what you have to do is follow the international law of occupation, and it states what you can and can't do. And the things that you cannot do are war crimes. Well, the United States was violating a bunch of the war crimes, including the banks, the realtors here, so forth. And the other thing that was really important was that because the Hawaiian Kingdom declared itself a neutral country back in 1854, there's also protocols that other countries have got to show in order to not convey, but
Comply.
agree to the neutrality of that country.
Right.
That never happened. And the United States, when they took over, literally brought in their military, used the Hawaiian Kingdom for transportation as they were battling the Filipinos down in the Philippines and all kinds of stuff.
Mhm.
And they're not supposed to bring in the military into a neutral country. They did, knowing that. So this is where we have the big problem today with the military being here in Hawaii and they're ignoring all the international laws, and committing war crimes.
And knowingly so. I remember when I was taking Dr. Keanu Sai's class, he had shared an actual quote from a U.S. naval officer named Alfred Mahan, who wrote the basically book on U.S. Navy code. And he said, quote, "We must violate the neutrality of those islands during the Spanish-American War." So now you have an admission of the violation of neutrality. So it's really interesting when you start getting into like the primary source documents and actually seeing the mindset behind the occupation of the Hawaiian Islands. So I'm really excited to actually ask you this question. Do you see your work today connected to earlier thinkers like your Kupuna David Malo and how that resistance and Ike kind of transfers from?
Yes, because even he signed the Kue petition, and a bunch of other relatives signed that petition, and so they were a strong Hawaiian Kingdom, and they didn't want to see it. They were living good lives in terms of the lives they led. Yeah, they weren't rich. They weren't the sugar plantation owners that weren't Hawaiian, and the sugar plantation owners, they hired, other nationalities to run the plantation, and so I really, when you look at all this history and the violation of the international law and the Hawaiian Kingdom law and international law and the continuation of it, it really makes you angry. So with the people today, all Hawaiians today, they need to step up, because what's happening is that in testimony that I've watched with them giving testimony, they're not hitting it. They're not hitting it.
Yeah.
They're saying everything except bringing up the illegality of what the United States and or its representatives are doing. And so they're using cultural and they're using traditional practices to make that argument. The United States loves it because they're complying with U.S. constitutional law like the Indians. And then the decisions are being made based on that. And I have yet to hear the majority of the testimonies coming out with the legal aspects, like using treaty of annexation, like using the laws of occupation being violated, like using the neutrality agreement being used, especially in times of where people were giving testimony at that Waikoloa. Because the neutrality agreement really sets the stage of the illegality of the military being here in Hawaii, period. And I need people to step up, because we've done a lot of educating, but people only take a little bit or just a little bit at the time, and then they use it as an argument without really knowing what the background and the implementation that should be used. And I've noticed that in all of the testimonies that have been given, and they're bringing it up because they haven't done their homework.
Yeah.
And our local people giving testimony got to do their homework. Because we've done a lot of educating. And so, granted, there's guys out there that know their stuff, but too many of our people, in trying to make an argument, are not hitting it. And then, let's say if the judge or the courts rule in their favor, the ruling comes down, they win on a technicality. And the courts are not awarding them the win based on Hawaiian Kingdom law, international law, laws of occupation. It's a technicality that, you can, all right, you win. And if you listen to what the judges are saying, it has nothing to do with the Hawaiian Kingdom when they make rulings in their favor. And so I'm glad they won the case, but they're walking out and say, oh, look, the Hawaiians won the case. No, it's based on U.S. law that you won the case on.
Speaking of testimonies, you recently gave a testimony. Where did that take place, and what were you speaking about?
Recent testimony was in Paradise Park in Kale, on the island of Hawaii. And it was because of a burial cave that was uncovered, in a place known to have a lot of burials. And the board of directors, which is mostly all haoles, moved to go ahead and build mailboxes over the caves.
Sheesh.
Okay. And so in the testimony I gave at the beginning, I was asking them to please move the mailboxes to another location because of the cave. And as we went along, I did that for like 2 or 3 months in a row, and they wouldn't do it. And it kept on, moving to put the mailboxes in and stuff like that. And so it's become a big battle, and also the question of lineal descendants versus cultural descendants. Who can oversee that as a Hawaiian? Okay, and then following the Big Island Burial Council and coming up with burial treatment plan. I've never heard anything like that. And so the state has put together that kind of policy to try to solve the problem of ancient burials. And so they created their own rules over if burials are uncovered. And I'm glad they did that because it's making a lot of people more conscious when they buy property, especially the haoles, when they buy property, that they need to get a cultural assessment on that property before they build. They haven't done that. And so with this testimony I gave, on the third month that I gave it, I called out, I did a kahea, because in the meeting that I was going to was only haoles, choke haoles, very few Hawaiians. And then when I put out the kahea, then, oh man, Hawaiians that own property, Hawaiians outside of Paradise Park, they came. And this is where the major fight started. So luckily, just a couple weeks ago, 2 or 3 weeks ago, the board of directors made a decision in executive session to move the mailboxes. But we still have some other issues that we've got to deal with, on the burial caves down there.
Wow. What do you feel the main message you wanted people to understand when you were giving your testimony about the burial sites?
Well, the thing that they got to understand is still Hawaiian land.
Yeah.
Regardless if you come here from California, Florida, or whatever, and you buy property, and you think that, oh, you bought the property so you can do whatever you want to do on the property, and not, follow, the traditional and the cultural and the legal aspects of the Hawaiian Kingdom. And then all of a sudden, with them buying the property, everything starts to change. They start putting up, making rules so that Hawaiians cannot participate in these meetings. And tomorrow, there's a TRO case taking place on one of the gals that showed up to protest, the meetings. And
Wow.
so she's going to court tomorrow, for TRO. And then some other Haole lady filed a criminal trespass charge because Hawaiians walked onto the property, which is, public property to begin with. And it's just crazy what they're doing now, and the stuff that we're having to deal with and go through.
Sorry to hear that.
Yeah, so tomorrow I'm going to go to court to support Emma from Waiʻi. She's the one that got the TRO placed on her. And it wasn't right. Plus, we have all the evidence to show that whatever claim that person has made never happened.
Yeah, it kind of goes back to the whole defect in title, no treaty of annexation. It's
Yeah,
the same argument.
Yeah.
It's funny too. I remember studying and researching about the Hawaiian Kingdom and the Universal Postal Union, which includes, I think, every country in the world. And we were there. We were one of the first countries in the Universal Postal Union with Brazil and other countries. So it's funny that a mailbox in the Hawaiian Kingdom is being built by an occupying power on our iwi kupuna, because under Hawaiian Kingdom law, I think there was the law of the sepulcher and burial laws under our own constitutions that protect.
Yes.
Just like any country would protect their own burial sites. Like in France, they have, probably protections on all the bones built under the cities, or Arlington, right, in the United States.
Well, the other problem we're having is that there are guys showing up that say, oh, they're cultural descendants and trying to take over the burial caves and build a memorial around these burial caves. And I'm going, what? And instead of just letting it go, let the weeds grow over it, whatever, they try to make it turn. And this is a cave in HPP. And so we got guys that are testifying, well, we have to honor our kupuna and stuff. And I said, no way. If they wanted to be honored, they would have built their own memorials, but instead they hid all the burials so that people would not be able to find them and desecrate their bones, because our ancestors believed that you desecrate the bones, and that's going to be a major problem for you in the hereafter.
Right.
And, just like what they did at Iolani Palace, they built a huge memorial, around that burial. And I'm going, no, it's in total conflict of our cultural side. Now, if they know that the burials were during the time where the Christians came and all this other stuff, and then they put headstones and so forth over the burials, okay, but these aren't burials of that time.
Mhm.
These are ancient, and they were buried in caves.
Oh, wow.
And I don't know how, quote, some experts that go around and say, oh, it's okay for us to create a memorial. No way. That was not the practice of our kupuna.
Yeah. That's the,
So,
Americanization of our mind.
right. That's right.
Yeah. We think
That's right.
everything needs a memorial.
That I can go on and on and on and talk about all
Yeah.
this.
No.
And
Well, thank you so much for your time. And
let's do it another. Let's do it absolutely another time because I have lots to say.
oh, yes. Yes. And I'm all ears. Well, big mahalo, Uncle Kale, for joining us. Actually, for people that don't know out there, Uncle Kale is the one who encouraged me when I was on the Big Island a couple weeks ago to go and start a podcast and kind of get these
Absolutely.
conversations out. So I appreciate you doing everything you did on Coconut Wireless and your work in the community and giving Hawaiians a voice. So for that, I mahalo you. And if you could just lift your shirt a little bit, and we'll end on that note. Aloha.
Aloha. Mahalo.
Mahalo.
Evelina mai kahaku